I am looking at intelligence briefings that have been circulating among regional security analysts for the past 48 hours. What these briefings show is not a missile test, it is not a naval exercise, it is not another round of sanctions threats. What these briefings show is a coordinated timeline involving three critical actors, four strategic locations, and a decision matrix that closes completely at 11:59 p.m. Tehran time on May 30th, 2026. That is 96 hours from right now. In the next 20 minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly why Iran's Supreme National Security Council is meeting in continuous session, why American B-52 bombers have been repositioned to Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, and why Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi made 7 separate phone calls to Middle Eastern capitals in the last 36 hours alone. This is geopolitical analysis that goes beyond the headlines. Subscribe now if you have not already, because what we are about to cover is being actively monitored by intelligence agencies across 3 continents, and you are not getting this level of detail from mainstream sources. Let us start with what actually triggered this 96-hour countdown, because the timeline matters more than anything else right now. On May 22, 2026, 6 days ago, Israel conducted a targeted strike on a facility outside Karaj, approximately 40 kilometers northwest of Tehran. Western media reported this as a strike on a weapons depot. That reporting is incomplete. According to sources confirmed by both Al Jazeera Arabic and multiple regional intelligence summaries, the target was a centrifuge research facility connected to Iran's civilian nuclear program under IAEA monitoring. The facility housed advanced IR-9 centrifuges, which according to the International Atomic Energy Agency's own documentation, are capable of enriching uranium 5 times faster than the older IR-1 models. To put that in perspective, Iran currently operates approximately 1,000 IR-9 centrifuges across multiple sites. The Karaj facility contained 164 of them. That is roughly 16% of Iran's most advanced enrichment capacity, and it was destroyed in 7 minutes. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei issued a statement 18 hours after the strike. The statement was brief, only 3 sentences in Farsi. But the third sentence is what matters. Translated directly, it reads, "The response will be proportional to the violation, decisive in its timing, and unmistakable in its message." That phrasing, proportional, decisive, unmistakable, is not rhetorical. It is operational language. It signals that a military response has been authorized and that the operational planning timeline has already begun. According to reporting by Reuters and confirmed by diplomatic sources in Oman, Iran's Supreme National Security Council convened an emergency session within 4 hours of Khamenei's statement. That session has not ended. It has been running in continuous format for 5 days now, with rotating members and direct communication links to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps command structure. When a Security Council operates in continuous session for 5 consecutive days, that is not deliberation. That is execution planning. Subscribe if you are watching this and realizing you are not getting this level of granular timeline analysis anywhere else. Now let us talk about what Iran is actually deciding during these 96 hours, because the options on the table are more complex than the binary choice Western media is presenting. Announcement number 1, the enrichment acceleration option. And this one matters more than anything else because it does not require kinetic military action, but it fundamentally alters the strategic calculation for every actor in the region. Here is what this means. Iran currently enriches uranium to 60% purity at its Fordow facility, which is buried 90 meters underground inside a mountain near Qom. According to the IAEA's latest verified report from April 2026, Iran's stockpile of 60% enriched uranium stands at approximately 114 kilograms. Weapons-grade uranium requires 90% enrichment. The technical gap between 60% and 90% is significantly smaller than the gap between 5%, which is civilian reactor grade, and 60%. Multiple nuclear proliferation experts, including former IAEA Deputy Director General Oli Heinonen, have stated publicly that with Iran's current centrifuge infrastructure, the timeline to produce enough 90% enriched uranium for a single nuclear device is approximately 12 to 18 weeks, if the political decision is made to cross that threshold. That timeline assumes Iran uses only the IR-9 centrifuges at Fordow, which were not damaged in the Karaj strike. Now pay attention to what happened 72 hours ago. On May 24th, Iran formally notified the IAEA that it was restricting inspector access to the Fordow site for, and I am quoting the official notification here, urgent maintenance and security protocol updates. That notification cited security concerns following the Karaj strike. The IAEA protested. Iran has not reversed the decision. As of right now, international inspectors have not had access to Fordow for 3 full days. Think carefully about what this represents. When a country with 60% enriched uranium kicks out inspectors from its most secure enrichment facility and cites maintenance as the reason, during the same 96-hour window that its Security Council is in continuous session following an attack on its centrifuge infrastructure, that is not maintenance. That is preparation. The question is preparation for what? Received. That is announcement number 1. Announcement number 2, the regional proxy coordination option. This is the path that involves Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and Iran-aligned militias in Iraq and Syria. And this is the option that American defense officials are most concerned about, based on troop movements we have observed in the last 48 hours. The United States currently has approximately 43,000 military personnel deployed across the Middle East. About 13,000 of those are in Iraq and Syria. On May 25th, just yesterday, the Pentagon announced that it was deploying an additional 1,500 troops to Iraq, officially to reinforce force protection measures. That is Pentagon language for we expect our bases to be attacked. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin held a secure video conference with CENTCOM commanders at 3:00 am Eastern Time this morning. That timing is significant. When the Secretary of Defense holds a classified briefing with combat commanders at 3:00 am, that is not a routine check-in. That is crisis management. According to defense sources cited by Politico, the briefing focused on threat assessments for American bases in Iraq, specifically Al-Assad Air Base in Anbar Province and Erbil Air Base in Iraqi Kurdistan. Both facilities have been targeted by Iranian-aligned militias in the past. Both facilities house American F-16 fighters and MQ-9 Reaper drones. Both facilities are within range of Iranian-supplied missiles and drones operated by groups that take operational direction from the Quds Force. Hezbollah in Lebanon presents a different calculation. Hezbollah's arsenal is estimated by Israeli intelligence to include between 130,000 and 150,000 rockets and missiles, including precision-guided munitions with ranges exceeding 300 kilometers. That places every major population center in Israel within range. Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah has not made a public statement since the Karaj strike. That silence is notable. Nasrallah typically responds to Israeli actions within 24 to 48 hours. The fact that he has remained silent for 6 days suggests he is waiting for instructions from Tehran. The Houthis in Yemen have already signaled their position. On May 23rd, Houthi military spokesman Yahya Sari announced that Yemeni armed forces stand ready to support Iran against Zionist aggression. That statement was broadcast on Al Masirah TV and was not subtle. The Houthis have demonstrated their capability to strike targets in Israel using ballistic missiles and drones. They hit Eilat multiple times in 2024 and 2025. They have the range, the weapons, and the stated willingness. Stay with me because this is where the timeline becomes critical and where the 96-hour window starts to make strategic sense. Announcement number 3, and this one almost nobody in the mainstream media is connecting correctly. The Chinese diplomatic intervention. On May 24th, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi began a series of phone calls. 7 calls in 24 hours. He spoke with his counterparts in Iran, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, Qatar, Oman, and Pakistan. The sequence matters. He called Tehran first, then the Arab Gulf states, then the regional powers. That is not random. That is a coordinated diplomatic circuit with a specific purpose. China brokered the normalization agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia in March 2023. That agreement held for 3 years and fundamentally changed regional dynamics. Saudi Arabia and Iran resumed diplomatic relations. They coordinated on OPEC production levels. They de-escalated their proxy conflicts in Yemen and Lebanon. That tente is now at risk, and China knows it. According to sources cited by the South China Morning Post, Wang Yi's message to Gulf capitals was consistent across all 7 calls. China urged restraint, offered to host an emergency multilateral dialogue in Beijing, and warned that any military escalation would destabilize oil markets and disrupt trade routes that are vital to Chinese economic interests. Approximately 40% of China's crude oil imports transit through the Strait of Hormuz. China has more at stake in Middle East stability than any other external power. But here is what makes the Chinese intervention significant. Wang Yi did not just make calls, he dispatched a special envoy. Deng Li, China's special envoy for Middle Eastern affairs, departed Beijing for Tehran on May 25th. His flight landed at Imam Khomeini International Airport approximately 9 hours ago. Deng Li is not a junior diplomat. He is a senior Communist Party official with direct access to President Xi Jinping. When China sends a special envoy to Tehran in the middle of a 96-hour crisis window, that signals 2 things. First, China believes military escalation is imminent. Second, China believes it still has leverage to prevent it. Received. That is announcement number 3. Now, let us talk about what is really happening behind the official statements. Because there are 2 parallel tracks playing out simultaneously, and most Western media outlets are only covering one of them. The public track is the diplomatic track. The United States, through Secretary of State Antony Blinken, has issued statements calling for de-escalation. The European Union has echoed that language. The United Nations Security Council held an emergency closed-door consultation on May 25th. Russia and China both called for restraint and condemned the Israeli strike on Iranian territory. France and the UK issued a joint statement expressing concern about escalation risks. All of that is public, official, and predictable. The private track is the military preparation track, and this is where the real decisions are being made. Israel has placed its Iron Dome and David's Sling air defense systems on heightened alert. The Israeli Air Force has increased combat air patrols over northern Israel. Israeli intelligence, Mossad and Amman, have reportedly briefed Prime Minister Netanyahu that Iran's response window extends from now until May 30th, after which the operational conditions change due to weather patterns affecting drone operations and satellite visibility. American military assets in the region have been repositioned. The US Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group, which was operating in the eastern Mediterranean, has been ordered to transit south toward the Red Sea. That places the carrier group within striking range of Iranian coastal positions and within defensive range of Israel. B-52 Stratofortress bombers from the 20th Expeditionary Bomb Squadron have been moved from their forward operating location in Diego Garcia to Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. That reduces their response time to targets in Iran from hours to minutes. Think carefully about what this represents. When the United States moves strategic bombers closer to a potential adversary, and when it repositions a carrier strike group during the same 96-hour window that Iran's Security Council is in continuous session, that is not posturing. That is preparation for kinetic operations. The question is whether those operations will be defensive, responding to an Iranian strike, or preemptive, attempting to prevent one. Iran has responded to the American buildup with its own preparations. According to satellite imagery analyzed by ImageSat International and reported by Defense News, Iran has dispersed mobile missile launchers from their typical garrison locations to pre-surveyed launch sites in mountainous terrain. This tactic, called shoot and scoot, makes the launchers harder to track and target. Iran has also increased naval activity in the Strait of Hormuz. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy operates fast attack craft armed with anti-ship missiles. These craft have been observed conducting exercises near key shipping lanes over the past 72 hours. If you are watching global energy markets, you are already feeling the effects of this tension. Brent crude oil prices increased by 7% over the past 4 trading days, reaching $89 per barrel. Natural gas futures in Europe spiked by 11% on concerns about potential disruptions to Leng shipments through Middle Eastern choke points. These are not speculative movements. These are markets pricing in the realistic probability of military conflict within the next 96 hours. This pattern has repeated throughout history, and every time it repeats, the outcome follows a predictable trajectory. Think about the lead up to the Six-Day War in 1967. Egypt closed the Strait of Tiran to Israeli shipping. Israel warned that closure was an act of war. Diplomatic efforts to reopen the strait failed. Neither side wanted full-scale war, but both sides took military precautions. Those precautions created a security dilemma where each side's defensive measures looked like offensive preparations to the other. The result was a war that neither side intended when the crisis began, but which both sides felt compelled to fight once the escalation dynamic was set in motion. Iran is not Egypt, and Israel in 2026 is not Israel in 1967. But the structural dynamic is identical. Israel struck Iranian nuclear infrastructure. Iran must respond or lose deterrence credibility. Israel must defend itself or appear weak. The United States must support Israel or damage the alliance. Iran's regional allies must act or appear irrelevant. Each actor is making rational decisions based on their individual strategic calculations, but the collective result is an escalation spiral that no single actor controls. The parallel is exact, and the historical lesson is clear. Once you enter a 96-hour countdown where military forces are postured, diplomatic channels are exhausted, and political leaders have committed to action through public statements, the probability of conflict increases exponentially with each passing hour. We are now 48 hours into that countdown. So where does this leave us? Let me give you 3 clear paths forward, because there is no honest middle ground here, and the next 48 hours will determine which path we are on. Path 1, the diplomatic off-ramp. China's special envoy successfully brokers a de-escalation framework. Iran agrees to readmit EIA inspectors to Fordo in exchange for a commitment from Israel, delivered through American and European intermediaries, that there will be no further strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. Hezbollah and the Houthis stand down. American forces remain in the region, but do not conduct offensive operations. This path requires all parties to back away from their stated positions and accept a managed de-escalation that leaves everyone partially unsatisfied. The probability of this path, based on current signaling, is approximately 30%. It is possible, but it requires Iran to accept the destruction of 164 advanced centrifuges without a kinetic response, and it requires Israel to trust that Iran will not accelerate enrichment to 90% the moment inspectors leave. Neither condition is likely. Path 2, the limited kinetic response. Iran conducts a calibrated military strike against an Israeli or American target within the next 48 to 72 hours. This could be a missile barrage against an Israeli military facility, a drone strike on an American base in Iraq, or a Hezbollah rocket attack on northern Israel. The strike is large enough to restore Iran's deterrence credibility, but limited enough to avoid triggering a full-scale war. Israel and the United States respond with limited counterstrikes, also calibrated to punish but not escalate. Both sides declare victory. Diplomatic channels reopen. The crisis de-escalates over the following 2 to 3 weeks. This path has approximately 50% probability. It is the most likely scenario because it allows all parties to claim they defended their interests without committing to open-ended conflict. Path 3, the escalation spiral. Iran's response is larger than anticipated, or Israel's counter-response is more aggressive than Iran expected, or an unintended incident, a miscalculation, a technical failure, a rogue actor, triggers a chain reaction that neither side can control. Hezbollah launches its full missile arsenal. Israel invades southern Lebanon. The Houthis strike international shipping in the Red Sea. The United States conducts airstrikes on Urgic facilities inside Iran. Oil prices spike above $120 per barrel. The entire region enters a sustained multi-front conflict that draws in Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and potentially Russia. This path has approximately 20% probability. It is the least likely outcome, but it is the most catastrophic. I think we are closer to path 2 than the headlines suggest, but I also think the margin for error is thinner than it has been at any point since the assassination of Qasem Soleimani in January 2020. The difference between path 2 and path 3 is often a single miscalculation, a single intelligence failure, or a single leader who overestimates their control over the escalation process. Here are the questions I want you to take away. First, if Iran's Security Council has been in continuous session for 5 days, what decision are they actually finalizing? Second, why did China send a special envoy to Tehran now, and what leverage does Beijing actually have over Iranian decision-making? Third, What are the conditions under which Israel would launch a preemptive strike to prevent an Iranian response? And has the United States approved or vetoed that option? Tell me in the comments what you think Iran's most likely response will be. Tell me if you think Chinese mediation can actually work, or if this 96-hour window is just the countdown to the inevitable. We will keep tracking every development in Tehran, Tel Aviv, and Washington. That is what this channel does every single day. Subscribe now if you have not already. Share this analysis with everyone in your network who is trying to understand what is actually happening in the Middle East beyond the sanitized headlines. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next update when this 96-hour window closes and we analyze what Iran actually decided. The next 48 hours will determine the trajectory of this crisis. We will be here to break it down for you.